It being 7 o'clock, I would like to call the meeting to order. I'll start by reading our agenda. At 7 p.m. we have visitors. At 7:10, approval of minutes. 7:20 is an update on the MRSA virus. 7:30 is recognition and vote to accept the Design Jet plotter. At 7:40 we had an update on early childhood with the early childhood coordinator. We're going to postpone that this evening. One of our presenters has had a death in the family, so we're going to postpone that. We'll then move on to superintendent job description and evaluation tool, school committee goals, policy meeting dates, followed by school committee meeting dates, fiscal 09 budget development update, a monthly budget summary by Mr. Jackson, and then other matters. So I'll start with visitors. Yes, if you'd like to come to the table, please, and give us your name and your address. Yes, well, you could stand if you want, but it's more comfortable to sit unless you're.
Sorry, I don't mind. I'm not going to be here very long. My name is Chris Long, and I am chairman for this year's Partnership for Drug-Free Foxborough. I came before you all a little over a month ago, and you people were very generous in giving us a donation and supporting us in our program, which ran last week. It was an okay turnout, and the parents were, informed. Marilyn is phenomenal, and I just wanted to say a super big thank you very much for your support.
You're very welcome. We'll continue that support throughout the year. You can count on it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for organizing.
Oh, well, my committee organized.
Right.
They're a good committee. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Happy Thanksgiving.
You too. Any other visitors? Please.
Yes, I made 10 copies. I didn't know how many people were going to be here. So.
Thank you very much.
You need to make copies.
Thank you, sir. Put these there, and then the rest we can put out to the audience.
Before I start reading my comment, I would like to thank Martha for working very hard last meeting, trying to remind everybody that policy implementation has protocol to follow. The fact that citizens participate in preparing the minutes and preparing the policies does not eliminate the need for the two readings and does not eliminate the right that citizens may have to give opinions during those two readings to influence the final policies. We tried to be civil. I tried to keep things not personal. Last meeting reminded me a little bit about the Collins report because of the editorializing that I heard. I was in a business trip, and sometimes work doesn't allow you to come back and be where you need to be. The most important part that I wanted to address tonight to everybody is that during the meeting, the chair presented to the public and members of the committee with a text that he was going to read prior to reading my letter. The first line of that statement, and I quote, "This topic was added for Mr. Bayon," end quote. While reading that statement, Mr. Harrington said, and I quote, "This topic was added at the request of Mr. Bayon," end quote. He knew then that that statement was false. Dr. Navarro, knowing that I had not made such a request, asked permission to speak and questioned the chair to show how I had asked for the topic to be added. Rather than recognizing his error, Mr. Harrington asked Dr. Navarro to stop interrupting and continued without correcting the record. I find myself lost for an explanation, and for the reason Mr. Harrington would opt for this distortion of the facts. Prior to reading my letter, he asked for 5 minutes to present his point of view. After he read my letter, a discussion continued with further comments about my position. I have asked for equal time to defend my reputation, which has been denied. He lied to the public and discredited me in the process. Is there an explanation?
Thank you, sir.
I haven't finished.
Oh, okay. Because that came to your letter, I thought you
Yes.
did.
Now I want to talk, because the comment was being made that sometimes people give copies of the statements to the press. Many times I have not given Mr. Mortimer a copy of my statement because I deviated from what I had written, because I changed my mind in the process from my house to here. I either made it more intense or I took intensity based on how I felt being here. That is a right that a citizen should never give up. That is a right that no committee should deny a person who has the option to write and organize their thoughts and have a chance to change their mind. It will also prevent people from being at home or being on the way from work and writing something down from participating. You are endorsing the participation, and I mentioned to you before that my fear is that a committee, and I was not referring to this one, because I had respect for all of you, that any other committee might come about and implement changes that will hurt our process. And if you want to review the recording, you will find that through the process of discussion, which was fantastic, because a very open discussion happened, but the process showed how Mrs. Lattery, picking up papers, was telling us that yes, here it says that they have to give us a letter if they want to be read. But also, if they are going to give it to us for someone to read it, they should also give it to us before the meeting. Mrs. Kominsky insisted in saying, we want to vote in the fact that we want to have these statements given to us prior to the meeting starting. Don't take my word for it. Larry, you have seen the recording once already to prove the points on what I had said, just to illustrate that I am a reckless person that requests a meeting and then disappears. So please review the recording and you will see the slippery slope that we can get into and allow somebody else to come in and manipulate the past and the precedent that we don't want to do. And as I am doing right now, I don't have a problem to come here and write without notes and talk without notes. But I want to protect the right of those that may want to use notes, that they should be able to come here and find a welcoming group without restrictions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Any other visitor comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is an update on the virus.
I'm sorry, Larry. Paul Jackson very kindly copied the thank you letter to the school committee. We'd like to maybe attach the original to our minutes, and Mr. Jackson has put copies out so that
I'm
you can
sorry.
see that.
That's right. And the next item is approval of the minutes. I skipped that by mistake. My apologies. There is a is there a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
I certainly have no problem with the minutes. If no one else does, I'd be happy to make that motion.
All right, motion by Kate, second by Martha. Discussion on the minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Now, the next item is the update on the virus. So would Ms. Kelly join us? And you want to introduce her?
I would, yeah. We have, first of all, let me stand corrected on this. This is a bacteria,
Correct.
not a virus. And we have two people who have been very active in our efforts about MRSA. Sharon Kelly is our nurse leader, and Craig Najarian is our athletic director. So we asked them, and I appreciate folks taking time and coming to inform the public, inform the committee, and even open up the conversation about, even some next steps. So. Shannon. Thank you.
And you're correct. MRSA is a bacteria, not a virus. It's methicillin, which is an antibiotic, resistant staph infection. Staph is a bacteria. What the nurses have done is what they've always been doing as far as any kind of infection. When students come into the health room and they have any kind of break in the skin, they teach them about how to take care of it, signs of infection, that they would need to see their doctor in case there was an infection. We also recognize any cases of infection, send them out to their healthcare providers, and we also instruct them as far as whether they can be here in school, what they need to do to be in school, and what they need to do to participate in athletics or not participate in athletics. The nurses have kind of gone one step further because it has been out in the news, and so we have put an article in the paper. Linda Mealy wrote an article that was in the Foxborough Reporter. We've also put that on our portion of the website, the school's website. It's also been on our newsletters. It will be in the next Foxworthy, which I believe comes out next week. We've always been concerned about any kind of skin infection, be it caused by a bacteria or a virus. We are particularly concerned about any of the sports that there's direct contact, so football has been a focus, and certainly wrestling because there's more skin-to-skin contact. We have in the past provided them, this is from the Department of Public Health, and it's just an information sheet about skin infections in general. So we're concerned about, besides MRSA, we're concerned about ringworm and impetigo and that sort of thing. This year, with it being in the news so much, we're going to address the wrestlers and give them a fact sheet that's going to be specific to MRSA. Just letting them know what they need to do as far as washing their hands, keeping their equipment clean, keeping anything covered, that if they have a wound that it needs to be, any break in the skin needs to be clean, needs to be covered, and not sharing personal items and that sort of thing, and that's all spelled out here. So that's pretty much the only different thing that we're going to do this year than we've done in the past, is focus specifically on MRSA, since we're now seeing it out in the community, where for years we've seen it in healthcare institutions. Now we're seeing it out in the community.
From my perspective, the big thing is just educating the kids as best we can. I think it's something new for them, and they're not really, they get into the habit of the days of not washing uniforms for superstitious reasons are over, And,
We've noticed that. We were talking about that in Linda's article.
So trying to get them into new routines, getting the coaches to educate them, and we're doing another athletics night coming up the first or second week in December, and we're going to add that to the agenda. We talk about drug and alcohol awareness, and it gives us a chance to do that on that night. But this is maybe a chance we could throw a 10-minute blurb in there, just to let them know. It's just some basic, just educate them basically so they understand going into the season. Obviously, football and wrestling are big factors. I even, we did our reconditioning bid for football. We send out our equipment, and I just put in the bid this year. If you have, there's some now that are putting that in different ways to clean the equipment so that they're being proactive and MRSA. And if, I'm sure if. That's going to be a booming business come, next year. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people jumping on that bandwagon. So that's the second thing. And even just going so far as to brainstorm ideas of ways we can keep our facilities clean. Obviously, the wrestling area, the football locker room is something we have a focal point on now. We're just brainstorming ideas and ways to make that better. Keeping their gear off the floor, keeping their gear clean, making sure they're bringing it home and getting it washed, and just getting into better routines. And the coaches are carrying that ball and trying to educate them as well.
Is there anything from a school committee point of view that we can do to provide you with greater support in this particular area?
I think from my perspective, it's funny. We had an athletic directors meeting in our league, and we had somebody come in and actually give us a PowerPoint on the whole thing because it was new to us. And I know I'd spoken to Sharon earlier today, and she was talking about how things just mutate and change. And I graduated from high school 17 years ago. I never heard of MRSA, but now here we are, and just getting them. I didn't know about it, and after that meeting, I felt like I was, way more educated than ever, and just getting them some general information. I don't know, if it's any, and we talked about it, it's really general hygiene and making sure that they're just, like Sharon had said, keeping their, washing their hands, keeping that equipment clean. Anything I'm missing, Sharon?
I think we protect ourselves better in the long run by being proactive and not reactive. If you wait until it hits, it's too late. So I think if you have the stops in place and we know what we do to try to protect the kids as best we can and ourselves, because it can be transmitted, unfortunately, from person to person. So I think if we have all the stops in place and we're educating them, we're doing a huge service to everybody within the system and to the students, because once it hits, it's too late.
Right.
So I think by being proactive, it's very important.
There's a number of products that are out there now that people that are experimental. They were presenting a couple of them at that athletic directors meeting. I'm sure there's going to be a bunch more of those coming out, and just ways to disinfect your facilities and the mats for wrestlers. Obviously, those are things that we're going to be proactive and make sure that we keep them clean. Because that's the thing they're going to have constant contact with. Making sure that the kids are doing skin checks on themselves. Constantly being consistent about it. So there's a couple ways to educate them to just to be aware of it.
Chris, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, just to pick up on that, Craig, I think that is important, and I know that school committee members and I attended a conference last week and had a chance to meet with some of the vendors who I'm sure have made some presentations to the athletic directors as well, and I was talking to an owner of one of the companies who's working in Connecticut and some other states, and he may be interested in using Foxborough as a pilot site to look at different kinds of chemicals, do some testing and all of that. Paul Jackson and I were talking about it a little bit this morning, and we expect that they'll be contacting us in the next couple of weeks, and it'll be interesting to look at different places, the locker rooms particularly, for the season coming up, the wrestling mats, the cheerleading areas, just at any area where we want to make sure that it's as clean as we can possibly get it. Craig also mentioned, and I know Paul and Mike O'Leary and I have been looking at some of our facilities and making sure that we have facilities where kids can hang things up in a way that allows the equipment to dry out and all of that. So there's some work that we can do with that as well over the next few months. But I agree with Martha that I think we're proactive on this. But you never know what can happen. But I think we've really educated the community pretty well on this. And we've educated our athletes, we've educated our students, and you both are doing a great job, I think, in making sure that this school has this topic, right on its focal point. So I think that's really important.
I think it's timely too that we're going to be having the second athletic.
Night.
Thank you. In December, because this is going to be another great opportunity to really push everything that you've been talking about tonight and remind the kids about it.
Yeah, because that's the scary thing. You can educate them all you want, but ultimately they're the ones that are going to take their gear home and wash it and clean it. And so it's just that's a perfect night where we're kicking off the winter season to really hammer away and make them aware of the facts.
Well, I think especially with the girls, just reminding them about not sharing makeup or, treating it as like you wouldn't share your toothbrush, kind of thing. I just think the more that kind of gets talked about, the better.
But I do think this is very good, and I'd like to thank you for, we've already said being proactive, but as we've asked, you've responded, and as well as you take care of our children, you're also helping us to communicate this to the community, because when you look at 60 Minutes and you see the schools and they're highlighting what it looks like, and parents are getting nervous. You've gotten the article in the Foxborough Reporter, so it is on the minds of parents, and so you're not only taking care and being proactive and educating our students, you're helping to do that with the community, and you're helping us to better communicate that message so we can assure parents, because I'm sure some of us have also gotten questions. I know I have. Do we have a plan? What are our protocols? What is it? So thank you very, very much for helping us to do that.
Thanks.
Any other comments?
I think one of the things we have to keep in mind if you're not doing it is having some sort of a log system as to how often mats are cleaned and when they're cleaned, because unfortunately in this litigious society, if you don't have something like that on board, then unfortunately, once something happens, you've got no way of backing up what we've done as a system. You know, I know we just had somebody come in and do a quality assurance in our office, and we had to make sure that we had logs for the sterilizers, for when we cleaned things, how we did it. So if you don't have something like that in place, then certainly it should be done, because unfortunately, when something happens and you don't have it, then you're already in trouble.
Right.
So if you don't have something like that, then probably it's time to implement something
Sure.
like that. So you have a rolling idea of how often things are cleaned and how they're done, and who's responsible.
Sure.
So that it's no, well, I thought you were doing it type of thing. And we're all guilty of it. It's all, and unfortunately, once things happen, then it's like, oh, why didn't we have this?
Right.
So if you don't have it, then I think it's probably time to look into it and set something up so that we can back it up more
Right.
than anything else.
Definitely.
Okay?
Anything else? All right, well, thank you very much. Appreciate you joining us. Chris, this next item, again, is recognition. Do you want to take the lead on this?
Perfect timing. This is, I think this is a very positive agenda item for us. I'm going to invite Jerry Roy and Ralph DeBona to come forward, and we have a gift from a community member, a business person in the community, and why don't I just let Jerry and Ralph talk a little bit about this, and then we can open it up for questions and comments.
Good evening. This past September, I got an email from Joe Estuccio. And years ago, I had his daughter, and I've been involved with Mrs. Estuccio also relative to her business of in-stock design. We did the basketball program a few years ago. Angela was a student of mine, as I said, and did a lot of great work, and got to know her as a very good art student. In fact, here's one of her pieces that she received an award at the Attleboro Museum Show. And so that's how the relationship started, and I hadn't heard from them in a while, and as I said, I got an email, and Joe said to me, how would you guys like a plotter? And I said, sure. You want us to come get it? Do you want us? What do you want us to do? We'll do anything we can to help you out, and yeah, we'd love to have it. So I talked to Mr. DeBona, and we had been talking for years about the fact that we needed a new plotter, especially for what Ralph does in the CAD area. So we had talked, and Joe delivered the plotter, and we decided to house it in Ralph's room. His plotter is, how old is that?
9 years.
9 years old. And we had talked about trying to get a new one, but as you know, they're very expensive. So Joe delivered it, spent about an hour and a half with us discussing how it worked. He volunteered to come back, and if we needed any other assistance, which I've been since contacted with him about buying supplies and a little additional training for us. The plotter is located over there.
And if I may add that we investigated this plotter before we received it, and the machine's about 5 years old, listed for 15 grand brand new. And if it was going to be resold today, it would be worth about $10,000. And not only did Mr. Estuccio donate us the plotter, but as you can see, there are 6 cartridges, print cartridges there. He donated 6 of those and 6 replacements for a total of 12 cartridges, and they go for about $150 to $175 a pop. And he also donated the 36-inch roll of photo paper, which retails for, what, Jerry, about $300 or more. So as you can see, there is a lot of money involved here. And the timing was impeccable because my plotter had failed, and it's 9 years old, and for the cost of repairing the plotter would have been almost as much as replacing the plotter, and my students need a plotter just as much as Jerry's students need a plotter. So it was the timing was great.
Probably Ralph's students probably needed a lot more than we do, given the fact that to produce something like this, which we did when Mike O'Leary came and said we wanted to take care of the grounds, and as you've seen, I believe, seen this before, and we put this together in Photoshop, and we sent it to the printer remotely, and this is the result. This is how large you can print. Our students, previous to this, were only able to print this size. So now we've opened up an entirely new, this size, and this size, which is 13 by 19, which is Super A3. Now we're moved to the next, totally to the next level. I must add also that along with Joe Estuccio, the plotter was housed at the Harvard Graduate School Design, and Mr. Hal Gold, who I believe is involved with computer services at Harvard, along with Joe Estuccio, donated the plotter to the Foxborough Public Schools. And if Joe was here, I produced a gift for him, because I don't know how we'd ever repay either of those two people for their sense of community and interest in promoting the arts for our young people in Foxborough. This is David Ortiz last June 6, 06, hitting a walk-off home run. So this is what the plotter is capable of doing.
Oh, beautiful. Excellent. I think he would really appreciate that, and that's nice that we're going to do that.
So it's just a wonderful opportunity for us, and especially for the kids, to be able to do this type of level work with the type of computers we have, the software we have, both in Ralph's room and in my lab. We can't prepare them any better than we do, because of the equipment and the generosity of not only the community, but you people also.
Well, congratulations. Our heartiest thanks to him. First of all, we need a motion to accept the gift.
Yes.
I'll make that motion.
Motion.
Accept the gift.
No, second.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Would we have money to have a frame to send it with a little thank you? And
I am
perhaps
sure
a
that
little
we can work that through the process.
I can take care of that. It's not a problem.
Jerry, you do wonderful work for us. You
The two of you.
always
The
do.
two of you, yes.
Jerry and Roy, thank you.
Yeah, Jerry and Ralph, I really want to thank you, and we've actually been reaching out to Joe Estuccio. I still would like him to come here, because I think it would be great recognition. He would be on cable, so we're hoping that at a future meeting, he wasn't available tonight. We've been playing a little phone tag back and forth, but and Jerry, maybe you and I can go visit him and prod him to come here. I'd really like him to. I'd really like to be able to thank him. Have the committee thank him face to face.
I would too, because
I think this is a significant gift.
I think it's nice for the community to put a face and a name together.
That's exactly the way
Absolutely.
I feel. So right after the Thanksgiving break here, we'll
Tell me the wanted man.
maybe go over with his gift, and we'll talk to him about coming to a future meeting.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the superintendent job description and evaluation tool, and I'll turn it over to Katie.
In your packets, you received a copy of the superintendent of schools administrative job description that will become part of our policy. It's actually already a policy, but as we're reviewing this. Basically, I did receive some input regarding some changes, basically in the order of the categories, some simple word changes, and the names of the categories. I hope everyone had a chance to look at it. The content is the same as the previous job description that we looked at. Are there any questions?
I'm very confused. This is the original that we had discussed.
No.
Do we have a copy of what was the original?
Yeah, did you put it in the
Did
copy?
you say the original, Martha, or you
Well, the
referred to last
first one that we
week's?
talked about.
Last week's.
This
Last week.
was the one we looked at on 11/5/07. The one that says revised. Yes, yeah, thank you.
Yes, the
Would
first
anyone
one in the
like-
packet was, yeah. Yeah, it's the same.
This is a copy of the draft from 11/5/05. That should have been included in the packet. And then the revised are just changes to, basically, like I said, actually, did I give you your?
All right, so this is the original draft. This
Here, why don't
is
you
the
take
revised.
this copy because it's not written on
Not
it.
written.
That's, yeah.
I tried to pull them out of my other thing, but I'm in the habit of tossing things at this point.
Like I said, the categories have, the order of them have been moved.
Okay, but why?
So that it maps to the superintendent's evaluation, because those were the categories.
The superintendent's evaluation or the superintendent's goals?
Evaluation.
Okay.
And
Because
to
the-
use similar terminology, it didn't really change the content, as you mentioned, Katie, we were changing
The terminology, I'm not sure which one, I didn't really see a lot of changes.
No, it's just the categories.
Yeah. I think the one thing, though, to note, though, is from the evaluation tool that we will look at. Some things have been combined and changed, altered a bit. We can discuss that afterwards, but
This is just the order is just lining up with the order in the evaluation tool, which makes it more
Well-
succinct, right?
why don't we look at that so that you can see why Kate changed the order? Kate will have to speak to that because I didn't change.
Okay, but the other thing is, this, we really can't act on this here. This, if this is going to be policy, this needs to be brought up with the policies. Okay?
Correct, but the idea was to try to get it to the point where tonight it's
Right.
pretty much done. And
It's a
then when we set up
formality.
later
Okay, and then
tonight,
it'll
the
be-
dates for the policies, we'll be
Okay.
able to get through that and adopt it at that point in time. So Katie, the one that's marked revised is the one that you would like the committee to go forward with?
Yes.
Should, the one that's marked revised under A, performance responsibilities,
Yes.
did we want that to read relations or relationship with the school committee?
However you prefer, or what the consensus
I
is
don't
of
have
the
a
group.
problem with it staying the way it is.
Well, it just says relationship with the school committee. So I think we should, if we're trying to make them work in tandem, they both should say relationship with the school committee.
Well, we
I think
could
it means the
probably
same.
wordsmith it.
Yeah, I think
No,
it
but
means the
just-
same, relations. I mean, it's how you're relating to the school committee,
Yeah.
or
Right.
it's the actual relationship. I think
I
that,
don't have a problem with
I think that if there are
relations.
some discrepancies between this and the evaluation tool, I mean, I'm not going to have a problem following that we're discussing the school committee and the relationship with the superintendent. If someone, you know, if there's concern about that, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Educational leadership, budget management, if it was listed as financial management, I mean, I think we're on the same page about that, about what that means. But
I think my view, Katie, is I think it's quite clear how the two map together. And whether we want to get into semantics of whether a word is X or a word is Y, I think it's very clear that they map together from my viewpoint. So I'm
So
happy
you're
with the
suggesting
revisions.
revised?
The revisions you've made, which include some of Kate's comments, and that I'm okay with this revised copy that you've submitted. I'll just poll the board. I'll poll the board. Katie, are you happy with the revised?
I'm fine with the minor change
All
that were done, yes.
right, Martha?
Yeah.
Beverly?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so there's a consensus to get this to the MASC folks so that as they are finalizing the policies, this would go forward in there to replace the old CBC. Okay? Now, if we can move on to the instrument itself.
Yes.
And again, Katie, would you lead the dialogue, please?
Yes. Just give me one moment, because I have a lot of copies
I understand.
of different
I
things,
think so, yeah.
even though I was very organized when I came here. Okay. Also of note, though, we did adopt this, just let's remember that on that job description is listed that the evaluation, the performance, no, wait a minute, hold on, that, that it's, part of that also is following the principles of effective administrative leadership.
So that goes with it.
Correct. So that
Just to
syncs
be-
with that.
Right,
That was also a
exactly.
goal that we
Right.
had to.
Correct.
Just so that So there's... that goes with that, Mike.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, this
Now, we
superintendent
have
evaluation
two
tool.
tools, one marked revised.
Yes.
And
Now,
the one revised, the one you want to talk to?
yes, let's do that, although that one was revised with input from Kate's suggestions and discussion with Dr. Martis. So maybe what I can do is point out to the committee the differences between this new revised evaluation tool and the original evaluation tool that was presented at the last meeting. Just give me one moment.
Do we have a copy of the proposal?
Yeah, we should, yes.
We have a draft, which was the one we
Yeah,
talked
the
about
draft.
last time, marked up with some
Yeah,
of Kate's suggestions.
the old one is the one that's marked up.
It should say 11/5/07. The marked up one. Yeah,
No.
the mark,
I
okay.
don't see dates on any of that.
It didn't. Oh,
But we
okay,
have the
okay.
original one,
Okay.
which Kate marked up, which would be what we talked
Okay.
about at the last
Right.
Last
meeting,
meeting, yeah.
plus her
Okay,
suggested
okay,
changes.
okay, great,
And then
okay.
the revised, I
Okay.
assume, is what you've agreed
Yes,
to, the
yes.
changes.
Okay, well, I have,
Well, the one
I
we
have
want to
some...
discuss.
Yeah, it was not actually agreed upon with me, but I
Okay.
did have some... Let's just look, why don't we just look to the first page, the critical success factors?
Okay?
And maybe, Kate, you can speak to the omission of several factors under there. One was listed as judgment that you omitted, and listening you combined with interpersonal relations and communications.
When Dr. Martis and I met and we reviewed that, and Dr. Martis jumped in here,
Sure.
it wasn't the critical success factor, it was how it was defined, which was very, very similar. They were really the same definitions. So when we looked at, for instance, judgment, and I don't care if you call it integrity, but some of those, the critical success factors, they were saying the same thing. So to make that, to be clearer, sometimes less is more, if that's an accurate reflection. Dr. Martis.
Yeah, I think, I'll just pick up on that too, Kate. I think that's exactly what our discussion was. If there's anything that was redundant, given that this is the first opportunity to do this, then it would make sense to try to simplify it if we could. It's a pretty extensive document. I mean, the other way we could look at it, just I think to be fair, is we lived for a year with what we had originally, and then we can revise it as we go along. But I think there are some good edits in here that made some sense to me. So I'm certainly open to either.
Great, Kate.
So what do you think about that edit, leaving out the section called judgment and putting it under decision-making? Did you feel that was one of the ones that made sense?
Yes.
If you want to add judgment, I think what Dr. Martis is saying, that's fine, but the definition should reflect what the characteristic of judgment is. When we looked at it, judgment was really written as decision-making, so it seemed rather redundant. So do you call it decision-making, or do you call it something that sounds good but may not?
It was just, I think it was an effort to simplify it and not to be redundant. And it was, if you look under decision-making, In the revised one, considers a wide range of factors in order to reach conclusions and makes judgments, so the word is in there, that result in positive outcomes and educational success. And under judgment, it says makes decisions likely to result positive outcomes and educational success. So it's just an opportunity not to be redundant, and it really is all under decision making.
Right.
Right, and it does use the word judgment in the first one when you...
That's what I mean. So what we were trying to do is look at it again and say, is there
a way to simplify it.
And as I said earlier, it may be that we're not ready to do that yet. We can always step back and then, but some of these I think just, made some sense. So.
Okay.
So that was one that made sense.
Right.
Okay. Moving on. I think, Kate, what you seem to do is you combined, you changed the order, and then you combined and omitted the general management responsibility, and you combined that into communication and public relations, and then you moved some of those expectations into other areas. So the content, in my mind, really wasn't changed by those alterations. The content is still there, describing it.
Okay.
So I mean, I'm fine with that. The one issue I did have, though, is with the back of the evaluation tool, and I do have some questions about that. I'm not sure. The individual goals. The way that it was originally set up was to just leave an area of for people to write in a paragraph form their evaluation of each of the individual goals in Dr. Martis's evaluation. I'm sorry, in his from his goals. The way that that Kate has suggested putting it in, I like the idea of the rating of it. I'd like to have room too, though, to write down a summary of if you want to comment on the particular.
Which I think we agreed to at the last meeting.
Right.
It would still have.
And isn't that down on the form at the
No,
bottom?
under each particular goal, under the communication, under the student achievement curriculum, and then exploring the early education, just an area for that.
I think what I'd suggest on that is just to make this page 2 or 3 pages.
Right, exactly.
So just open it up, and,
Right.
or give any of you an opportunity. This part actually could be an attachment that you could open yourself and decide how much you want to put in, and that would make it either one page, as it's shown here, or it could be as many pages as you'd like.
Right, correct.
So I think this was really to be somewhat brief and not open it up yet. But I think obviously word processing allows us to make it as expansive as we want.
And then the other thing is the overall performance rating.
Okay, so does anybody have an objection then to adding 2 or 3 lines underneath each one of these, so someone could write it whenever
That's
they
what we
wish?
agreed upon
Okay.
last week.
Yeah, just because I am anal,
Right.
then we need to make that clear in the directions, so just please feel free to add comments, because some may and some may,
Oh,
so
good
we've
point.
got both. So
You
the-
brought up another point. That was the other thing. The instructions are not clear to me. For each goal listed below, rate performance for each of the expectations. That's very clear. Then give an overall rating for the goal area.
No,
What are
that's
you
redundant.
what are you referring to?
I have to refer, I didn't write that.
Okay.
So, which did you want, Dr. Martis?
Let's see, for each rate performance for each of the expectations, and then okay, so that's the last piece. So that probably shouldn't be in there.
It's whichever one you would prefer.
Yeah, the second
So you
one I
prefer
don't-
the first.
And then someone just mentioned another piece of direction that we should probably put in there.
Right, which is to fill in the blanks if you'd like.
Right.
To write,
Right, yeah.
right, okay. Let's,
Or written comments.
Yeah.
Provide written comments, if applicable, in the space provided.
yeah, provide, that's a good idea. Provide comments.
In the space provided?
In the space provided.
Yeah, that's fine, that makes sense.
Dr. Martis, did you want to have, I'm just curious about this, because on the last page, it's overall performance rating. Give an overall performance rating based on overall rating redundant there. Given in responsibility areas and individual goal section, are you then asking to have one number that represents
Everything?
this whole document? Because,
I've seen it done in a couple of different
Yeah.
ways. One is that the chair generally can do that.
Puts it all
Right.
together.
Put it in a composite form and summarize, so that
Right.
certainly can happen that way. Or there can be, I think this was as much about summary comments, overall general comments, that kind of thing, which I've also seen and had in evaluation tools that I've used.
I personally, I would prefer to omit that. I think, I mean, I like the idea of rating each,
Area.
each area, and then I'm going to have plenty of room to write my ideas about all that, and then to give it to the chair to then composite.
I have a little different take. For instance, I believe the chair, per policy, it'd still be a composite. For me, I would like to be able to give feedback on the responsibilities, and it could be up and down, but then I give my feedback on the goals, but I think the chair would also want to know, so what? How did I evaluate that? For me, I would feel more comfortable giving an overall rating. It doesn't mean I'm just one of 5, and that overall rating goes to the chair so that there's no misunderstanding, because each of us may have a different degree of how we give feedback. So it just allows the chair to clearly understand. So for my preference, I would rather say, here is all my detailed feedback and evaluation on both sections. And for me, how I interpret my feedback in an overall rating, and that's what goes to the chair, and the chair then can make that into the composite.
So what are you
doing individual goals, and you're asking for overall ratings, and then you're going to overall the overall.
You're saying
Look at this.
you want to
This says
take
overall, and then you're going to make another thing that's overall.
If that's confusing,
Overall. It is very
then
confusing.
take out the overall. I'm just saying, if you
Yeah,
wanted to give a rating, I would like to be able to give.
I don't think the overall is needed here. And then each of us give one overall rating of the,
Of
They
each
don't call it
individual
overall,
thing.
it's whatever you want to call it,
Just call
but
it
you
rating.
either have a rating, you
Just
just
call it
have a
rating.
rating, if that's less confusing, that's fine.
Okay.
Kate, to say it a little bit differently, if I'm hearing you, since we don't put a weight factor, that communication is 23%, student achievement is 19%,
Yeah.
curriculum is 28%, it's hard to know how much weight anybody, Beverly might give communication 30%, Martha might give it 20%, you might give it 18%. So you're asking for an overall rating that says, as an individual reviewing the superintendent, considering all of these factors, in your own weight, do you rate him a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, or 5? And that takes the debate about should communication be, for all of us, 23%. It may be more important to you, and you shouldn't have to necessarily be limited to your view on communication. Your view on communication should be limited to what the committee thinks. You should be able to share that. And so giving an overall rating allows you to put the weight wherever you think it was applicable. So if you gave him, just for sake, a 5 in communication, a 5 for student achievement, a 1 in curriculum, a 5 in number 4, and a 5 in number 5, but in your mind, curriculum was so important, was so overwhelming, that overall that pulled your rating down to a 3, where mathematically it wouldn't add to a 3. That's important for you to be able to share that if that's your view. Is that what you're saying?
That is my view.
Okay.
Can I ask, where is the key for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Am I just not saying it?
It's in the beginning.
It's in the beginning?
On page 2, which is on the back.
Page 2, right in the back of the front,
Okay, all right.
performance standards.
Okay, but, when you read these instructions, give an overall performance rating based on overall rating given in responsibility areas and individual goal sections.
it's
It's
confusing.
confusing. It's
gotta
way
be, I
too
think-
confusing. If you rate each area and then somebody puts the composite together, that to me is enough. I don't want to do that.
Well, I
think we could change the instructions a little bit
Yeah.
on that to more of what you said, Larry,
Right.
about
I'm a little confused, Larry, though, about your example. I'm sorry, maybe
All right,
I
so
missed
let me go
this.
through it one more
I know,
time.
I understand what the example was, but
Right.
you're saying, how does this apply to this overall performance rating?
Well, what I'm saying is if you have 1 through 5,
Right?
is the overall going to be adding up the 5 numbers, dividing by 5, and that's his average rating?
Exactly, right, is
Okay,
that it?
right. But some might say yes, some might say no. I think communication has a bigger weight than student achievement, and therefore the committee should establish weights for each, and then you do the mathematics to come to that. I think what I thought I heard Kate saying is rather than go through all the mathematics, you can do the same thing by saying when an individual fills it out and puts a 5, a 4, a 5, a 3, a 2, a 1, whatever they do, that there's just an overall rating that says, overall, when I take everything into consideration, I think Chris is consistently exceeds requirements. Results achieved consistently exceed the requirements of the job in all key areas, demonstrates knowledge. And even though it says in all key areas, and some people might say all means all, in most performance evaluations, the all would mean generally all. And so if your overall rating was a 4, you could put it as a 4. But the way it is here, unless you put weights on here, it's hard for anyone to just add up those numbers and get what the average might be. Now, if we put weights on there, then you would know that if you rated it a 5 and it was 20%, you'd know how to multiply. The chair would know how to multiply to come up with a real composite average for you. So there's really 2 ways to do it. That would be the mathematical way of doing it. The other way would be to have each individual, when they get done doing the evaluation, to say, okay, put this aside for a second. Overall, when you think of everything that the superintendent did in the last year, would you rate him 1 to 5? And that's what I think that last section is what Kate's asking for. Is that correct, Kate?
Yes, understanding that we're asking to evaluate the performance on his responsibility areas, which we've articulated from the job description, and his goals. And they're 2 separate areas. He may be a 5 in areas of responsibility, but a 4 on goal for a number of reasons. And I just think or could conversely be the opposite way. It just, for me, we're asking, if you believe he should be measured on his goals, and we believe that he should be measured on these responsibility areas, they're really 2 separate areas.
But you're combining them in that statement by saying, given
But
in
I'm
responsibility
saying,
areas, and you want us to...
Right, is there, based on those together, because both are 5, is there an overall, is the overall rating, is there, for me, there's an overall rating based on those two sections, responsibility area and goals.
So you do want them intertwined. You do want them...
I see them as related, yes.
Is the first area worth 50% of his score?
Yeah.
And the second area 50, or is it 40 and 60? How do you weight between the 2 sections? And then even between the 2 sections, how do you come up with an average unless you do it one of 2 ways?
And again, just to really repeat, I would try this and see how it works.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, I think that, you know, and then you'll be able to assess as you go through this. You really, I mean, some of this is so subjective right now because you haven't done it.
Correct.
So going through this, you may at the end say, you know, that overall part didn't help. It just
I
didn't
really
help.
don't think it does.
Or
I think it's...
Or you may, when you finish it, say, you know, it was nice to be able to round the whole thing off and say, this is how I think the whole evaluation, the whole year went.
As an individual in the committee, I'm not concerned with it not being perfect right out of the box.
Yeah.
I think what's important are the steps that we're taking, the processes we're putting in place, and the fact that as a committee we're willing to acknowledge that let's go through it once, let's see how it works, what doesn't work, and then tweak it at that point. It doesn't mean that we can't, before we sit down, for instance, before I put the composite together for Chris, doesn't mean we can't tweak the instrument if it's not working for all of us at that point.
Sure.
Okay.
And I'm certainly open to that. I hope the rest of the committee would be open to that tweaking right through the process. It should be a continuous improvement.
And given the process that we've gone through in this, which I think has been extensive, this could be a workshop at next year's conference, because other communities are struggling with this. How do you go through this? How do you try to link the job description? How do you make sure all of this works together? So I think all the work. I really appreciate everyone's effort in this, because I think it was really helpful.
Okay, so what's the instrument we're going to use going forward to try out of the box? Are we going to use the revised, or are we going to use the revised to the revised?
Well, could I?
Because we need to make some changes to the revised.
Yeah, the revised. Let me just make sure I have the changes that I think we need to look at. I think we've appeared that we were fine with using the responsibility areas, relationship with the school committee, number 1, educational leadership, personnel management, number 3, budget management, number 4, communications and public relations, number 5. So I think, and that syncs with the job description.
Right.
So I think that makes sense, and it certainly does with the goals. I will have changed the instructions, just make sure that I'm correct so that when we finish this tomorrow, instructions for each goal listed below, rate performance of each of the expectations, provide written comments where applicable in the space provided.
Right.
Yes.
That's the directions.
Right.
Instructions. And then let me try this for instructions on number 3, overall performance rating. Rather than what is there, taking all responsibility areas into account, give an overall performance rating.
Perfect.
And then you would delete, are you going to
Yeah,
keep this
I like
other
that.
one, this other overall rating here?
And then we're going to take out the overall
Yeah.
on all of those, and just
Okay.
put rating.
Okay.
Just put rating.
All right.
And then, because then the third one is really the overall
And-
performance rating.
And then you'll have a summary after that.
And
So
then
that's-
summary comments after that.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, was
Could
the
you read
last?
that again under the overall performance rating,
Sure.
the instructions?
Taking all responsibility areas into account, give an overall performance rating.
So is it responsibility, all
Well-
responsibility areas?
All
Responsibility.
Areas or all responsibilities and goals? I'm confused.
Look back at
You
this.
did it the first time? Wendy got it the first time.
Wendy, read it,
Go ahead,
please.
Wendy.
Taking all responsibility areas into account, give an overall performance rating.
But that's not right, because the categories responsibility areas and individual.
Oh, and individual goals. All responsibility areas and individual goals.
The two
Into
sections of the
account.
instrument.
Okay, right.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Could I ask there was one word change. If we look on page 4, under expectations,
Yes. Which area?
in the second one that begins with fosters, the original one read fosters a cooperative relationship, and the word was changed to proactive. But just the buzzword during the whole conference, and bringing us into the 21st century, if we're going to change the word, I'd like to use the word collaborative there.
Oh.
Collaborate, collaboration, and collaborative is the
Yeah,
word that's used throughout the conference.
Yeah.
So if we're going to change one word, I'd prefer collaborative there.
Fine by me.
Fosters a collaborative relationship
good
with
with that.
Yeah, I think that speaks to.
And why we're, I agree, why we're there, if I may, in addition to that exact line, there are 2 pieces that are missing from the job description that aren't on the evaluation form, and I didn't catch it because that was, and Dr. Martis, if you agree, where it says foster then now a collaborative relationship with municipal leaders to ensure financial needs of the district are understood, the piece that's left out from the job description, I think is important here, is ultimately responsible for the use of school properties and equipment. That was the one thing that wasn't carried over, and I didn't catch it until I read it today,
Is it listed in the
in the job
principles
descriptions.
and examples of effective?
It's listed in the job description. If it's not important, it's not important, but if it's important to say,
Wait, you're saying it was where originally?
it was in the job description, and I thought that was the one thing when I read that whole category.
It's item 4B,
Yeah.
under business and finance, ultimately responsible for use and care of school properties and equipment and any guidelines or regulations pertaining to such.
I'm sorry, Larry, I still don't see it. Where is it?
4B?
B, you're
On
right.
page 4.
No, item 4B.
Oh, thank you. And that,
job
I
description.
thought it was important enough that that should be in,
I've got
under the
5B.
responsibility area.
Did you change it?
Are you looking at the old one?
No, this is ultimately responsible, it's under 5B. on this
Well, that's-
one, if I've got that wrong.
That's the old one.
Was I say revised? Oh, revised.
You have to be revised.
You're testing me today, right, folks?
Here we go. So what are you saying, Kate? You want that 4B into where?
My suggestion is, and I can live with however we decide, but it was the one thing that stood out under the job description that wasn't really incorporated under the responsibility areas, and I just thought that was odd. And there was one more about state regulations that I think should also be carried over. Again, it's up to the group, but I felt that it was important enough, as the superintendent's job description made comment on it, that it should be in the evaluation tool under responsibility area, because it seemed like a big item.
I can live with
It is such a given.
that.
I mean, we don't have everything that's in the job description.
Right, well, that's why I'm wondering if, well, you want to evaluate it, that's what you're saying. You want it in the evaluation.
I'm suggesting that we bring it up. I hear that we don't really want to, so I would defer to Dr. Martis. If he thinks it's important, when we met, I didn't care about the words as long as we were consistent. And
Yeah, I think the consistency is important, but I'm okay without it for now, and if we find that at some point we need it, I think we can refer back.
Well,
I think it's pretty comprehensive now.
I mean, I think that too,
I
you know,
don't think you need to put it in there.
if you look at this, the principles of effective administrative leadership and examples of descriptors, I mean, you know, we could take every single statement out of this
Right.
and put it into an evaluation tool, if
Right.
that's what we want to do.
No, we don't need to do
No.
that, I don't think.
So I think
No. I can
there may
live
be
with
other
that.
things that,
There's plenty of room in the written comments to add if you think he has an area to
Right.
improve in that respect. Now, just
That's
to-
why we have the sentence.
for clarification, as part of our policy, we're going to have the job description. As part of our policy, do we intend to include the evaluation instrument as well?
Not under the policy. It's a tool that we use, it's not a policy.
Okay.
Because we will be revising it.
Because whoever sits
constantly
on the
to
committee
fit.
might change the tool, the performance.
Right, and
So I
but
wouldn't put it in the policy.
I thought it was referenced in the policy manual, that we'll evaluate the superintendent, da-da-da-da-da.
Right, but
It is.
but I don't think the
Right.
tool has ever been there. I think the tool is a work in progress.
Right, but is there
You put it in the
a
policy
problem
book.
with putting it in the policy book, or do you just want to approve the instrument separately?
I think you want to prove it separately. I don't think you want to put it in the policy, because I don't think it's fair for us to put a tool in there that somebody else is going to have to live with 4 years.
Well, they don't have to live with it, they can change it,
No,
though,
I
they
know,
can change it
but
in
I-
policy. But
I agree with Martha.
implementation.
I think
This is
the
implementation.
policy will speak to a tool, but I think
And this is
as
the
Jim Hardy and
implementation of the tool.
others have said, if we put a copy of that in, then that becomes the policy. People can so narrowly interpret it. You know, even then you have to go through changing and first reading and second reading to enhance the tool. And where it's in Dr. Mortis's contract, I think we owe it to him to be timely and
And
keep
especially where this is the
updating
first
that.
time
do we
we've
have a
had such
motion
tool.
then to approve the document that we've just discussed with the subject changes, or do you want to wait until those changes are
I'd like to see
typed?
I'd like to see them typed, because there's so many different
All
pieces
right,
of
then
paper here,
we
Larry.
will approve it at the next meeting
Yes,
then, so we
okay.
can move on.
Great.
I think we're covered, just to point this discussion, because we have, under the job description, the evaluation, that the performance of this position will be evaluated annually in accordance with provisions of the committee's
Yeah.
policy of evaluation of the superintendent. Now, the legal references are the superintendent's contract. This is from,
Which alludes to a tool or whatever,
Yeah.
so.
To me, it's a little bit of form over substance, and I don't really care, I just want the committee, if we're going to approve it, let's approve it, we'll approve it when we get the revised copy, we can either approve it as part of our meeting or as part of the policy,
I'd
but as
rather
long as it
see it
gets
all in
approved.
black and white.
That's fine.
Yeah, I agree.
So we'll ask that at our next meeting, that be an agenda item for approval.
Please.
Hopefully it'll take 1 minute, because all the changes will have been made that we discussed, read it and go forward.
Perfect.
Now, Katie, the last item that you'll lead tonight, I think, unless we add another one for you, is the school committee
You're doing a
goals
good
for
job.
2007 and 2008, again, which you did an excellent job on leading the dialogue through the committee. So I think that we'd like to approve these this evening, so why don't you try to walk us through where we are?
Okay, thank you. The draft that you have in front of you, it does say draft, of the school committee goals for 2007, 2008, and their date on the bottom should say November 15th, just so we're clear about what
Okay,
document
perfect.
we're looking at. A note that I did attach to this, so we'll just review it. The goals are the same as the last time we reviewed this at the last meeting. three changes from the original draft. One is under the first bullet of student achievement. It's a clarification of the need to assess the curriculum cycle after a review is completed by Dr. Martis. So it reads, continue to review and assess recommendations regarding the effectiveness of the current curriculum cycle, including timelines. Provide funding for recommended resources to increase student achievement. That's been reworded. Kate had sent me some suggestions, and I incorporated one of those. That was one of her suggestions, okay. Specifically the timelines as well, because as we look at the curriculum cycle, we'll obviously review that. The second change, again, is it's under the heading of policy review on the back of the, actually it's called policy development, excuse me, yes. The second bullet, detailing updates to policy if needed. So it says, review the policy manual at least annually or when MASC advises of potential policy changes, which is the same. And again, suggestion from Kate, update individual policies when needed or required by district or legislative mandate. Because again, we do that, and that's right. I think important to clarify. Okay. Oh, I changed the heading on 5. Instead of oversight of superintendent performance to management of superintendent's performance. And then one other change that I did make, actually I said we should discuss it, but I did review the superintendent's goals, and again, keeping in line, this was another suggestion, under student achievement, for a last bullet, review and define district-wide technology needs. It's something that Dr. Martis will be doing. And so,
where is that?
I'm sorry, that is not, I just added that one. Oh. That one was something it's not in there, but I would like to put it under the last bullet, which is review assessment of full-day kindergarten for the district. Underneath that, put review and define district-wide technology needs.
I'm sorry, Katie, I don't,
okay, I'm sorry, under student achievement,
yeah.
Just what I'd like to put in is, just as a last bullet, it's not listed there, but I'd like to add to review and define district-wide technology needs. That was something that you had put in your goals.
Yeah, but it's more, because it's in the superintendent's goals, district-wide technology, but do we drop out then the alcohol and obesity or wellness? We're not going to put that
We have drug and alcohol education. We have that already in the student achievement.
I'm sorry, I'm just... So can't you just continue to focus on drug and...
Okay, that's
well,
it was a suggestion of...
I know, but what was the one that was original?
Oversight of student performance, of superintendent performance.
I don't like the word management.
But let's just stay on the one we're on. We can go back to that in a minute. I guess what I'm hearing is that part of the reason why the drug and alcohol was on here is this is school committee, and the school committee was driving that. The school committee was making it a big issue, and that's why that was important to put there. In the superintendent's evaluation and under the business manager's evaluation, they'll be looking at technology needs and all of those kinds of things. I'm not so sure that we need to add that as a school committee goal, because that's really theirs. Whereas the alcohol was something that we're trying to drive, and we're trying to increase that awareness.
That's fine. I reviewed a draft that Kate had sent me regarding her ideas, and I was trying to incorporate some of those into the existing draft. So that's why I included that.
So we don't need it, really.
No, I have a different opinion that I'd like to share. We have the superintendent's goal, and we have it. It talks in terms of alcohol and drug, wellness, childhood obesity, and district-wide technology. And my thought is that we need to support the superintendent in achieving that goal, and that is our goal. It is important to us. We're responsible for making sure that Dr. Martis is in fact successful with that. And I think if you say that alcohol and drug and wellness, childhood obesity, and district-wide technology are important, then I think it should be listed. If it was important enough to give it to Dr. Martis, it certainly should be important enough for us, and I think it's a bigger item than we realize.
Where do you see obesity? All I see on the school committee drafts is continue to focus on drug and alcohol initiated by the school committee.
No, I think Kate's talking about the superintendent's goals.
Right, but
Right.
that was feedback because that was in the superintendent's goals, that was feedback I gave to Katie. Katie
Okay.
would prefer not to have that added, and that's fine, but I do feel very strongly about it. If
Okay.
it was important enough to cite it for Dr.
understand
Martis's
that.
goal, then I think it's important for us to say that it's a goal for us, because we've had different meetings where we've said, yes, wellness and childhood obesity is important to us. We certainly have demonstrated alcohol and drug, and we talk all the time about district-wide technology, so.
Martha, your thoughts? Sorry, ma'am, I couldn't hear.
I said there's too many pieces of paper here.
Well, there should only be two in front of you.
I know.
There should be
This one?
the Katie's revised one,
Well, this one.
and the suggestions by Kate.
Yeah.
Those are the only two.
These two.
7:50.
Katie's
One
draft.
says November 15th on the bottom, that's mine, and then Kate's is in bigger
Well,
bold.
first of all, I don't like the word management of superintendent's performance. What was the first one we had?
That's, I incorporated that from Kate's. The original one was oversight.
I like
Doesn't
oversight
Mask
better than
use management, though?
I
Don't they?
care what they
they're-
do. I don't like, I think it's too
Bless you.
I'm not sure what they use.
Let's take these one at a time. I don't know that we actually manage his performance.
I know,
We do
that's
we do
overview.
oversee his performance.
oversee it, but we don't manage it. That's micromanaging.
Oversee the superintendent's performance.
Or evaluate the superintendent's performance, is what
We're
we
not
really do.
managing his performance.
We evaluate his performance, is what we do. And which is why we provide regular ongoing feedback, annual performance review, et cetera.
Well, the evaluate was.
One second, Beverly. Let's just have one conversation and speak up so everybody can hear everybody. So, Deb, you
My
were saying?
suggestion, even though it's not related to me, is I don't see where you have verbs in the others, so I'm wondering if you even need a verb like oversee. Why don't you just put superintendent's performance?
Okay.
Yeah,
Katie, your thoughts on that, is all right?
Yeah, I like that,
I
yeah.
like that.
Martha's
yeah.
out.
Yeah,
Bev?
thank you, Dylan.
Yeah, or either that or leave it to noun evaluation instead of the verb.
All right, but
What about just superintendent's
Superintendent's
performance?
is that all right with
That's
you?
fine.
All right, is
Yes.
that all right? All right, so that's done. Superintendent's performance is number 5. Taking out management of the. All right, your next comment, Martha.
Policy management. Yes, that's good.
Jump to somebody else for a minute.
All right, Katie, if you go back to number 2, it says work to increase Foxborough MCAS scores to be in the top XX percentile by 2000 something. Increase SAT scores by something percent by 2 something. You know, these are long-range goals for us to measure our performance, but in order to approve this, we have to set some targets. Do we want to be in the top third? Do we want to be in the top 20%? And do we want 5 years to get there? What were the thoughts?
I think right now, this is a reach. I think just a general statement is better until we know, we've got to know where we are to know where we want to go. So if you start putting in numbers and percentages right now, I don't think that's realistic.
Well, but how do you measure the goals and objectives then? I'd rather have you put a statement in that says, you have a bullet that says to, by the end of the year, determine where you want to be in terms of percentile, et cetera.
Yeah, I like that.
All right, then you
I
can
think that's- I
measure
think that's
that you've
good.
done
Yes,
that, and you've
yes.
determined that it's the top 20 or 25%. But the way it is today, if you leave it like this, then it would be fair for someone to say, well, how do you evaluate yourself? I say, well, we really didn't evaluate ourselves. So on that one, if that's what the committee would, if the committee needs 6 months to determine where that might be, then I would change that opening and I would add a bullet that says for us to come up with those numbers.
I like that idea, Larry, because I think it also gives the new administration
Yeah,
time.
some time to look at it.
Instead of putting constraints on them at this moment.
Right.
But I think it's also important for this school committee, who has spent the last year talking about accountability, and we will have measurable, clear,
Correct.
objective goals. And that was one of the reasons that I said to Dr. Martis, I personally like us being very clear and specific, because then we really are not just saying we're going to be accountable, we're really meaning it. But I don't know what the numbers are.
don't know
But
what the
I would
numbers
defer
are
to
yet.
Dr. Martis,
Right.
and that's what I had said down in Mask. Tell me what the numbers are, because I'm very happy to plug numbers in,
Right.
but they may not be the right numbers.
Correct.
So I'm very comfortable waiting for Dr. Martis's recommendation along with
So why don't we
Debbie Spinelli's.
rephrase that to make the goal that by the end of our cycle, 2007, 2008, we, together with the superintendent, will establish those specific goals.
Yeah, that's more relevant.
For me, Larry, as long as it needs to be just a little tighter, that we're going to increase where we are today.
Correct.
That has to be the thrust, or else it's just been lip service.
Right, and I don't think there's anybody disagreeing. The goal is to move up, not stay the same.
Right. To increase our flat scores, or however you want it, but it has to be, there has to be some oomph to it, or it's just lip service.
Well, I think they have to tell us realistically how long it's going to take to increase those. You can't expect the administration that's in here right now to say next year's are going to be that much higher, because they haven't been able to implement their change or put whatever they think should be there.
Just my view, personally, is this doesn't have to be year by year. This could be a bold statement that says 5 years from today, we want our scores to improve 20%. And that hopefully that, committees can change that goal later on, but that we would, when we talk about budgets, we talk about funding, we talk about programs, we talk about curricula, is that going to get us to that goal of a 20% improvement, or whatever that goal might be? If we want to get into the top 10%, then maybe one of the strategies might be to go out and visit those communities and understand what are they doing that we're not doing. So from my viewpoint, it isn't meant to be in next year it's going to be 2%, and next year it's going to be what do we want, what's the broad direction we want to take it, and how robust do we want to set our goals? Do we want to say, well, let's only shoot for 2% a year because we think we can do that? Or do you want to say, no, we really want to help the community understand that we believe that Foxborough should be improving to be in the top 25%, right? If you looked at the latest MCAS scores and you compared to Mansfield as an example, there were some distinct differences between Mansfield and Foxborough. Now, we should be able to sit as a committee and say, understanding Mansfield versus Foxborough, understanding our budget and their budget, understanding the Hockomock, would we want to set a goal to be the best in the Hockomock or the top 20% of the state? Whatever that might be, that's where the dialogue should take place. And if it takes 6 months with the new administration to have that kind of a discussion, that's what the specific item should be, with the intention that we aren't here to just, if we're going to just maintain the status quo and be happy with what we have, then I think we're failing the students, and our goals ought to be to improve where we are. And I think the administration came here hoping to do that. I'm not opposed to giving them another 6 months to help us figure out that right answer. I would just like to change the wording on that, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what do you want to change it to again?
Well, we'd add a bullet, and we can work on the bullet again. We'll approve this, I guess, final at the next meeting so people can see a final marked up copy. But we'd work with Chris to just add a bullet to say, by the end of this cycle, we would like to, we wouldn't use these words, but we'd like to put a stake in the ground with where do we want our long-term vision for the school to be in terms of MCAS scores and SAT scores.
I'd like to identify maybe those scores.
Those can be strategies in order to accomplish that, but I want us to be as grand as we can be, because I'd rather set a goal to be in the top 20% and end up at 28 than to set a goal at 30 to be in the top third and maybe come in at that level. I don't mind missing the goal if it's that bodacious of a goal. And if we've gone from, I'll make up a number, from 44 to 28 and we didn't hit the 25, that's still a goal we should be pretty proud of. So it's not one that I'm saying, let's pick an easy one that we know that we can do it just so we can be accountable. I think we ought to have a real stretch goal, and we ought to work really hard at that. And what people ought to judge us on is how close we come to that stretch goal. How much progress have we made in improving the MCAS scores or improving the SAT scores for the students in Foxborough?
Sounds like a good plan.
Okay, Martha, do you have other comments that you wanted to have made? Right, Deb?
Were we going to not include review and define district-wide technology needs? Leave that to the superintendent and the business manager, because that's their domain.
What's your pleasure?
I don't feel that we need it here. under student achievement.
Okay, I think
But
Kate's pleasure is to include it. How about Martha and Beverly?
Well, we talked about...
I'm sorry, Martha and Katie, I'm sorry.
Well, when we talked about goals and we had our session with Glenn Kuchar, I think we had to learn to define between the difference between given and what your expectations are. To me, there are some things that are a given, and technology is a given. So I don't know as we have to put it down.
So my question would be, do you want to add it or not add it?
No, I don't want
No. Katie, yes or no? See, when you go back and watch these tapes, you can find all sorts of misspeaks. You're Katie.
I like the
I'm
Katie.
sorry.
I like that. It helps me.
My apologies.
Is there a middle nickname?
Do you want to add it, Katie, or not?
I guess I'd like to hear from Kate, if she has anything else to add about wanting that, to be a part of it. I mean, I'm trying to be open. I
think one of the things, and what Mr. Jackson has done for us, and will continue for a budget perspective, we've gotten really good at buying the right equipment. And I think that's tremendous that we're not waiting, 8, 9 years. We're back on a 6-year cycle. But personally, from a budget perspective, which is under my domain, I don't know that I can support that when we have not looked at the technology infrastructure. We have students that are in fact graduating this year that are not computer literate. So I guess, and it's been a number of we've had a number of years have gone by. We fixed the technology infrastructure. The help of Mr. Jackson and the team that we have in place, my God, they have jumped through hoops to fix the structure. But we're still not on the curriculum, and we said that that's going to be included in curriculum. So to me, that is a very major concern. We can say that we're for alcohol and drug education, we're for wellness and reducing obesity, and we're for technology. But for me, if we really believe in those things, then the rubber needs to meet the road, and it needs to be part of our objectives and not lip service. So I feel very, very strongly that if it is that important and we spend time, effort, and money on it, then it should be in our goals.
Kate, with all due respect, when you said we have students that will not graduate not being computer literate,
yes,
what do you base that on?
Well, we have students who receive, in the middle school we have keyboarding, okay? At the high school level, unless they take an elective as a computer course, they're not necessarily exposed to it. And IMing, to me, is not a technical skill.
No, I understand that, but
and we do have students who don't take computer courses because they're offered as electives. So,
but that doesn't mean they're illiterate when it comes to
we do have
computers.
Well, I can only tell you that there are some students who do not have the computer literacy skills that we would think.
Right, and I'm just asking
they go
what
to
you base that
colleges.
on.
My own experience. I mean, I had a student who graduated in 2003. I have a student who will graduate this year who probably knows a little bit more on Word because he actually had to do a presentation, but not nearly the skills that he's going to have to compete with. And I'm glad we're using technology. I just don't think that it's consistent across. And we say we want district-wide technology because we've never really looked at the curriculum. And I just think that is important for us to do.
So I guess two pieces. When you first started talking about district-wide technology, I was thinking that you were also thinking about Paul Bortolotti and his whole structure and the infrastructure. You're not talking about that.
No, I'm not. I think these people have done a remarkable job, but we need to step up the pace and take a look at curriculum.
Yeah, but the bottom line is you can't force any student to take a program they don't want to take.
Absolutely.
Number one.
The assistant superintendent has a comment.
I do. Just to help you along a little bit, I think that while we all want to be concerned about technology, I don't see technology in terms of the skills kids need or come up with any different from any of the other curriculum areas. So I'm not sure that the assessment of technology needs in terms of the curriculum cycle and curriculum review, they're not embedded in some of the other things you have. I think that we just talked about it today, as a matter of fact. So I'm not sure I see it as any different than looking at ELA or looking at math and the courses offered and how kids come out with different things. So I'm not so sure that it isn't embedded in some of the other activities that we will be doing to review everything that we offer.
Such as the first bullet
Yeah,
that
that's what I
says
was just
continue
gonna
to
say.
Yeah, I
review.
do see it as no different than
Yeah.
some of the other areas. They all need some attention, as in every school district. So I would assume that the technology exposure and integration and skills that the kids get would be discussed through what we're going to do anyway, just as it would for math or art or fine arts or music or anything else. So I think it's in there somewhere. I'm not sure you have to pull it out and make it separate.
But look, I mean,
As long as
that
we have
very
the
first
discussion and
bullet.
that we have the commitment to do it, because it's fallen by the wayside, and I don't want to assume anymore that it won't be up there as important as math or science, because I do think it's important.
But I think it is covered under the curriculum cycle, just like wellness issues like childhood obesity.
But I
That
think what I'm hearing Kate say is that when we talk about curriculum, we're often talking math and science and English. We're not often talking technology, and she would like to have that higher in our dialogue, higher in our discussion, and to make sure that all the committee understands that that's as important as science or math or history or English or anything else. Is that right, Kate?
Not quite, but that's
Okay.
I would like to hire you as my spokesman.
I'm just trying to make sure. You see, what I'm trying to do is make sure I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, and it's great,
I'm not
but that's
trying
not
to
quite what I
tell-
meant, but it
Okay.
sounded real good, Larry. We take time out, and we say these things are important. I just don't want us to lose sight of it. We're so lucky to have the educators we have, and to have you. You're great with the data. You're great with... I'm willing to sit back and just assess all the curriculum, because I know it's going to come up again. It's that we have the dialogue that says, this is really important, and it's fallen by the wayside. And the current curriculum structure, technology, from a curriculum standpoint, won't even be addressed until, 2009, 2010? But if you can speed that up, or you can, as you look across
Because I don't think that will turn out to be true. I think
know,
you have to
so
look
I'm-
at that anyway.
You're
But
gonna- I'm
just
very
because
comfortable
it's
with you
not
saying
in the
you're gonna look at
major,
them.
just because it's not in the major review cycle for this year, it doesn't mean that we're not going to look at it and attend to it. So there are mini reviews going on all the time, just because it's not a major review. So I feel pretty comfortable assuring you that it's going to be addressed.
And
It's
I
up to
think
you
it's
whether you
important
wanna
that we
keep
have
it
the
on the
dialogue,
school.
because each year in the budget, I'm going to say, okay, well, are we using, we now have better computer, are we using them? I'm not sure that we do what we think. We have a great technology team, but I'm not sure that we're where we think we want to be.
Yeah, just to pick up on a little bit about what Debbie said, and actually it was a major focus of the conference last week. I think we have to be clear about technology is not a curriculum. Technology is a tool. I mean, we don't teach, as one of our speakers said, we don't teach pen and paper. And so I think we have to be careful. It should be embedded. It's tools that are embedded in, a graphing calculator is embedded into math courses. Word processing is embedded in language arts, social studies, all sorts of things that people, how we use the tools. And that's really part of the curriculum review process. I'm not sure standalone work, calling it technology, is really the way we want to go anyway. Partly because we can't forget that the generation that we're teaching is not the generation that's sitting before us tonight. And the kids, as we also know, are very technologically savvy in their own way. It's a matter of focusing them and using tools that help them learn better.
Right.
That's the key. So I think, Debbie's point is the right point. We need to integrate it into what are the tools. I worry that
We've
not
left it
all of
behind
our-
for a number of years, so
not-
I'm glad you're going to
yeah,
look at
that
it.
not all of our tools are being used as effectively or as appropriately as we want to. So I think that really is the key to really where we want to go with this. So I'm comfortable with that first part about the whole assessment piece that I think we're going to be doing, that we are already doing anyway. So.
All right, so we leave
Okay,
it
so
out.
now, is
Thank
your
you,
answer,
Debbie.
Katie, you leave it in or leave it out?
Leave it out.
Leave it out, okay. Now to Kate, for any other comments.
I am now back to where Martha is. I need to oversee the revised document.
Yeah, and we're going to do that, but are there any
So-
other changes you want to bring up tonight for us to
I
change?
guess for me, anything, I want to be clear on that we use precise verbiage as we did with the superintendent. I'd like to see the measurements. I don't see as many measurements, and that makes me nervous, because if we can't measure ourselves,
Measurements working.
I don't see them here. So I know there were some like, okay, we're going to oversee the superintendent's plan for comprehensive communication system. For me, it's...
Where are you?
One,
It's
the
number
first bullet
one.
underneath number one.
It's support building a comprehensive communication system by implementing the superintendent's January '08 plan. I mean, his job is clearly to develop the plan. Our job is to decide whether or not we're going to approve it, and there's a date. So it's more, for me, it's being specific with the goal and the wording. That's very important to me, and I'm not sure that we're there with this document, but I'd have to see the revised version. If you look at student achievement, I feel very strongly that we've got to be very specific, and it's not that we're going to grow it by 2%, but I think if we are strategic and as good as we say we've been in terms of wanting to be accountable and be able to tell taxpayers what we've done, I think we've got to, I want to see us have a goal. I feel very strongly about that.
Kate, the only thing I would add, though, is that the school committee, as far as I know, and if I could be wrong, I make plenty of mistakes, we've not had written goals and objectives.
Never had it.
So, again, my goal this year was to come up with a good base. It probably won't be perfect, and then continue to refine it. And so if it isn't quite perfect or isn't quite specific enough, it doesn't mean we're not trying to be accountable. It doesn't mean we're not trying to be transparent. It means that we're growing as a team and trying to refine and take big steps, but not take steps that are difficult for the committee to take at this point. So I agree with you that making them as measurable as possible is good, but I think just doing what we've done is a large step forward in accountability and transparency, and whether it's perfect or not, time will tell, but it should be a living document that changes over time on a year-to-year basis.
Let me just add, since you've asked for my opinion, I want to be very clear. I don't expect the school committee goals to be perfect, but I do not. I could not vote for something that's poorly written. And my question is, my feedback is, these are not as well written as we have for the superintendents. So I'd like us to be as clear, as crisp, and as specific in our verbs and our measurements as we have been for the superintendent's goals. That's all. That's my feedback. It's a great first pass, and yeah, we could live with it, but I'd like it to be as well done for us as we've done it for the superintendent.
Katie, are you willing to take all of the feedback from tonight and come up with a final document for us to approve at the next meeting, taking into consideration all the comments, including Kate's recent comments, and coming up with a document that you'd like to present to the committee?
I think the changes that we've made tonight, I'm fine with. If you would like me to take more comments and go back, I'm willing to do that, but I am content with this document as it stands. But with the additions that, of course, that we've discussed tonight, but I mean, I'm willing. Obviously, this is a committee decision.
Right. What I'd like to ask you to do is to take all the comments that you heard this evening, the ones that you think we all agreed to as a committee, so that we have a clean copy for the next meeting. All right? Because we talked about some changes that we would make, and we add a bullet here, we change under student achievement, et cetera. Again, recognizing it might not be 100% perfect, but do the best you can at the changes we made. And then I would just ask you to, along with any other committee member, and let's not wait till the next meeting and debate it, but if there are areas where you think as a committee member there needs to be more specificity, or there needs to be more verbs, or there needs to be a closer tie to something, then get that information to Katie quickly so that she can get us a revised document. What I don't want to work off of, again, is have members complaining there's too many pieces of paper and they can't finish it.
Right. Yeah.
And what I'd like to try to do is have an up or down vote at the next meeting. So we spent lots of time in the last couple of meetings. I don't want to shortcut the process because I want it to be a major step forward. But you heard everyone's comments. You heard what we agreed to. Make the changes. And Kate, if there's some specificity that you think, please share that. Beverly, the same thing. If there's anything else, go right to Katie with it so that Katie can pull it together and give it to all of us for a final vote at the next meeting.
Sure.
All right? Thank you.
If I may, I think it's important. it's not that we're complaining. We've talked twice about the job description, we've talked twice about the evaluation tool. This is really the first time we've talked about our goals. I don't think it's complaining, but I do think it's appropriate that we as a group discuss that. And I
don't think I
see
used the word
this as-
complaining.
I'm
I didn't
sorry,
mean to
thought
imply
heard-
the word complaining.
I thought I heard you say the word complaining, if anyone's complaining.
I might have, but I didn't think I
I think
did.
it's important as a group, if we believe that having goals, and I think we all are very committed to having goals, that it is important. And I think it's of value to have that discussed. And so be it if there's a difference of opinion. I think the discussion is important.
That's correct.
Oh, I echo that, absolutely.
I'm very comfortable with essentially what Katie has done, and I'm comfortable with some minor changes, but I don't want to retool the whole thing.
I don't think it's necessary to retool this whole thing.
I don't want to just start nitpicking.
Has anyone
changing
said that
it?
it needs to be retooled? Is that what you're joking?
Well, I think some of the verbiage that's,
saying.
there'll be, one person will use one word to describe the same thing. I don't think that needs to be
I just
altered,
don't
but I
wanna
think if
work
there's
with
specificity. Okay.
Let's not use that word.
That's a good one, though. That's a good, I mean, there's, obviously, we can do that.
It's kind of fun.
So,
That poor woman, she couldn't pronounce anything. But anyways, but I just think, there's some minor things here.
We need some comic relief here, okay?
I'm very comfortable with what we have. It's more than we've ever had before, and I think it's a work in progress.
And it will always be.
Yeah.
I mean, we should.
As it should be,
We
sure.
should look at it periodically throughout each year.
okay, is the committee okay with moving on to the next
Yes.
agenda item?
Yes.
Okay, the next agenda item, Martha, is to set the dates for the policy meeting reviews.
Well, I know everybody hated Friday nights, but I like them. It's just such a great way to end the week, First of all, have we got any word as to when we're getting this?
No.
No, all right, well.
Well, okay,
And we really, just in all
I'm
fairness...
frustrated. I got to tell you as chair, I'm very frustrated and unhappy.
I think-
Because we worked really hard over the summer, we've had lots of promises to get this stuff, and now it's almost December. So as one member, I don't care who's responsible, it's dragging on way too long. So whether we need to get to mask and light a fire underneath them, or what the real root cause is, I'd like to understand that, because I want to bring the
Because
policy
we can't set up a
review
meeting that we don't have a book.
to a resolution.
I think they're back to
Jim
from the.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the last we heard was, it was at the printer, coming back. So what I thought we would do tonight by putting this item on was to set a couple of dates.
Okay.
And then communicate that with Jim.
Tell them we want it by such and such a date.
And let him
Okay.
know that we need this, and we're ready to move.
Okay.
And I agree with you, Larry, and although, in fairness to them, I know that there was a lot of planning for last week's conference, and I know that they were all involved, so,
Right.
and that's not to offer excuses, it's just that,
The entire staff.
yeah, it's
Okay, does
700
everybody-
people, and so,
So
but I
what-
think
what
it's
dates?
appropriate that, Martha, why don't you just lead the,
Does everybody hate Fridays? Is that definitely off the board? Want to do Thursday?
Thursday?
Thursday, okay.
Thursday would
All right, we have a
work.
Thursday.
Yeah, it's-
Larry, let's hear from you, because you're a traveling person.
Let's see here.
The only
Are we
time I
trying for
can't do
November
is
or
a Tuesday.
December? December?
Well,
We're
December.
We're pretty much in. I would say, given this being Thanksgiving week, we'll communicate with Jim tomorrow. We'll give him all of next week. And so I think, we have a meeting on the 3rd, is our next school committee meeting.
All right, how about December 13th?
What day is that?
That's a Thursday.
I'm not available that day, Martha.
All right, how about the 12th?
Is that a Wednesday?
Yeah.
The 12th I am available.
What about the 20th? That's right before Christmas. See,
Well, how about that week before, but the week of the 3rd?
All right,
We have
how
a meeting.
about the
that
5th or the
Thursday.
6th?
Or
You said
December.
Wednesday.
The 6th is a
Thursday.
major concert
Sixth is a
Thursday here.
conference.
Oh, all right,
How about
okay.
the 5th?
That's Hanukkah.
I am in California that whole week.
All right.
All right, how about, well, school's closed the last week, so we're not going to pick that week. I got to tell you something, folks. Even if we get this book back, who's going to sit down and read it in like 3 or 4 days?
I know. Yeah, we're going to
I
be.
think we're being kind of, as
Well,
much
my
as...
sense is if we
break it
get
into
it,
sections again.
if we get it back the week after Thanksgiving, the last week of November,
Okay.
and then we give people, since that first week, other than the school committee meeting on the 3rd, and there's actually, there's no reason why we couldn't weave some of that conversation in on the 3rd if we
I was
have
just
it
going to say,
earlier.
if we don't have
And we
a
could
huge agenda or
spend-
something we have to do on the 3rd, can we make that?
We could spend an hour on it and go through,
We've got budget
we have budget
sessions as well.
presentations.
Okay.
Is December 12th,
That's a
that was a
Wednesday.
date that was thrown out.
All right, how about
What
December
day of the
12th?
week is that?
It's a Wednesday.
Okay, that's a Wednesday. On Wednesday. All right, how about the 12th? All right, everybody pencil in 7 o'clock, 6:30,
That's it?
Whatever you
7
want.
o'clock.
7 o'clock,
because that is a work day for me.
Yeah,
7
7
o'clock,
o'clock on the 12th.
policies.
all right.
That's Bill's birthday.
And I'm
Okay.
sorry, 7 to 9, we're saying 7.
7 to 9.
And you said Tuesdays doesn't work for you, Martha,
Two,
right?
that's my late day, Larry.
How about, do you want to do it book the 19th too? The 2 Wednesdays, the 12th and the 19th?
Okay.
Do you have something, Pam?
I think. I'm sorry I didn't bring my.
Well, why don't we just pencil it in? Then
Pencil
you can
it in.
if that's an
Okay.
issue, we can pick a different date.
What worked really well this summer, we kind of got into a roll.
Yeah.
If we, in answer to your question, Martha, I think if we're able to get the book and we
Yeah.
each pick out what, and I think it could go very, very quickly because I'm sure most of the changes will be there. And I think if all
Remember,
the
we
eyes are
reviewed-
looking and we just.
Yeah.
Right.
We reviewed
This
a
is
lot,
not going
but
to be a
Yeah,
review.
no,
This
this
is
is not a
No.
review.
It's
This is
not
an
a
edit-
wordsmithing
This is,
exercise.
no, this is
No.
editing. This is editing
Right.
to make
Just-
sure that what
right.
we had written
What-
on our sheets is in
what our
fact incorporated.
Well, how
suggestions
it-
are incorporated, so it
That's
should
right.
be shorter.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, all right, so everybody's all set with the 12th and the 19th?
We'll schedule those for now, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
Okay.
But we
You
should,
know,
I would
and
think
as
we
long as
should
we have a majority of the members here, and as long as the people who can't be here have,
worked and
you know,
commented.
communicated with us about it, we can do that. Okay.
I would just like to ask
Yeah,
that
we did
that
before.
if possible, from the time that we get it, that we have, 3 or 4 days, again, depending on when it comes, because I think to sit with it quiet, if I come and do the best job as a group, it's because I've had the time to sit down individually, review what my notes were when we were going through it, and it will go much faster than once we're together. So to be more productive, I'd just like a couple of days to really make sure I can do the planning and the full reading.
All right.
Yeah, I would think by tomorrow or Wednesday, we should have a good idea from Jim Hardy and
Okay.
MASC when they're coming, when they're delivering to us.
Right.
And then if there's issues,
Go
then you
from
guys
there.
can communicate with us as to,
It's my
What else we
understanding
have
that
to
it
do?
is printed.
That's what I think.
So it's just a delivery.
okay,
So I think it's the delivery date
okay.
that we
So-
need to find out about.
And if the first meeting is the 12th, then that gives everybody 2 weeks really to
Yeah.
To look
review the
at.
material and go through it, check their
Christmas
notes.
shopping, but it's okay.
All right? Okay, the next item on the agenda is school committee meeting dates, and the reason why that's there is the meeting schedule for December 17th is now a special town meeting.
Right.
So the question is, and because December, we're going to start reviewing, have presentations from each of the schools on their budget, we just can't, cancel that meeting. Would people be available on the 10th? And if so, would that work for the superintendent and the budget presentations?
Yeah, Paul and I talked about it today, I think we...
Okay, so we'll do
So the
school
10th, so
committee.
the,
Right, so we'll change
So we'll
the
do the
meeting.
3rd and the 10th.
3rd and the 10th.
Okay,
And
that's
we'll
fine.
be using those primarily, we'll be doing a lot of budget-type reviews for
Okay.
next fiscal year. Okay?
Works.
Which then leads us into fiscal '09 budget development update. What I wanted Paul to do is to start reviewing with us, so again, we know when the schools are coming, when the department heads are coming to do their presentations, and what the timeline is from the school standpoint, so that everybody was on the same page. So either one of you would like to take the lead?
Yeah, we spent quite a bit of time talking about this today. We've had meetings with each principal and with the respective directors of each department. Paul and staff are putting the budget together now in a first draft. I think that's That's something that's ongoing now. On the 3rd, we expect to have an overview of the budget as we see it right now. And then we need to discuss whether we bring in, on the 3rd, start to bring in the schools and the principals. But I would suggest that on the 10th, we bring in all of the schools and devote pretty much the entire meeting to budget. We were also, and I think I know it's going to be difficult with the policy work as well, and then do the departments right after that. And that may, just given the calendar now, that may then be the first meeting in January.
Okay.
But I think that looking back at last year's process, I think that would put us pretty close within a week or so of being in sync with everything. At the same time, we're also, as Larry mentioned at the last meeting, we're also going to be meeting with the town.
Right.
And that will give us a better sense of what the revenue side looks like and where we are with the entire budget development process.
When do we have to have the budget ready to submit on the town side?
The end of...
The first version or administration's version will be available December 3rd.
No, to give to the town.
When does the school committee have to approve it?
The last Monday in January, I believe, policy, we have to have a public hearing and then vote on the meeting, vote on the budget.
It has to go to the advisory by February 1st.
But we'll give, the advisory will get a pre-copy on the 3rd, December 3rd.
On December 30?
3rd.
On December 3rd.
So we'll have a budget before they present? Or are they going to present first and then we're going to have it?
Who's do they present, Martha?
The principals and the department heads.
They're going to, I thought I heard Chris say we're going to get an overview from him, and then after the overview, we'll get the presentation from each of the principals.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because what he's done is, I presume you'll have met with them.
Yes.
And what they're going to be presenting is kind of what you've agreed with them. The one thing, Chris, that I do want to emphasize, I don't necessarily think it's needed, but just for clarity, to make it clear, there was debate last year on the committee that in the past, principals or department heads were not allowed to come and present their budget. And the committee was clear that we wanted to hear from them directly. Now, we certainly recognize that they need to work through you for budget preparation. However, the committee would like, at those public discussions, unfettered access to their thoughts, their ideas, so that last year, for instance, that's how we came up with the math specialist. It was not originally proposed, but as the committee debated and dialogued with those folks as to where they thought their concerns were, their needs were, and where funding was an issue, it allowed us to have a dialogue to reprioritize some spending in order to provide that. So I know your open style will not be an issue, but I just wanted to, unless the committee has a change of heart, reiterate that we want to be able to have a dialogue as opposed to them coming in and reading a script that has been signed off word for word as to what they're going to be able to say.
Well, not only that, I think it's important for the town to know what does it really take to run a top-notch school system, and not what we have to settle for. And if we never tell the people in this community what we really need, then they think it's okay, that's what we get by with. And I think it's very important for them to hear that this is what you need, but this is what we have to settle for because of budget restraints or whatever, so that if and when it comes to funding issues, people understand they can make a choice as to where they want to spend their money. So I think that was important for them to be able to, for everybody to be able to show the town, what do you need to run the school system, not what can we afford.
And the way we got to that was really, they presented kind of their affordability as they worked with Jan last year. And then we got into a dialogue, well, what isn't there, what could we do, would we do if we had the additional money? And that led to a discussion of where some of those gaps were, some of which we addressed through doing other things, some of which we weren't able to address. But it was that open dialogue with the public that was important to us, and I just want to make sure that we still have that.
We do. We've had Paul and Debbie and I actually have sat down with all of the principals and all of the directors of departments and reiterated that. We've said to them, we want you to come forward with, the budget as I looked at it today is more than we can afford.
Right.
In November, every budget I've ever worked on is more than you can afford. And so that's just the reality. And then, obviously the next step in that is prioritizing. Here and just putting, lists together. This is what we can afford. This is what we believe we can do, and this is what we can deliver on. And as I think the public knows, it's also a matter of working closely with the town as the revenue picture changes in different ways. Sometimes good, and sometimes not so good. So I think that's also the work that we'll be doing at the same time.
Yeah, I think to just put it a little differently, we're not, as a committee, instructing you or the principals to come back with a budget that is X percent over last year, period. And that happens in some communities.
We haven't done that.
What we're doing is saying, come back to us with kind of probably not everything we'd want, but a reasonable approach to what is rational, which will be, as it always has been, more than we can afford, but it allows us to have that discussion so the public knows at the end of the day what we may be trading off or what we may not be doing. So, since you've not been through before, I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page.
Very helpful.
Okay. Mr. Jackson, would you now take us into the current fiscal year and where do we stand there and walk us through, even I recognize that it's very early in the year. We're really only a few months into the school year and we haven't even got into the winter months for the heating, et cetera. But why don't you walk us through where we are to date?
As in the past, I've attached a cover memo detailing the high spots of the ins and outs of the budget as it currently has been projected, and then with the summary statement attached. As always, we've highlighted the new changes to the budget. Currently, the budget deficit is projected to be approximately $378,000.
Excuse me, we don't have a copy of it.
It should be up there. Unless they're gone. No?
We'll make copies right now for you.
Yeah.
Wendy will do that.
Wendy? Yeah. Do you want to wait a minute, or?
Yeah, why don't we just wait a minute to do that?
I can look on give this to them, Paul.
I can look through it.
You can look through there?
But Mr. Nevato needs a copy.
I think
so
give
are
him
you
mine,
sure?
it's not marked up, I'll look on this one.
Okay, all right.
What?
All right, go ahead, Paul.
So rather than go through the details, if anybody has any specific questions, I'd welcome.
I'm sorry.
Yeah?
I have to comment on the last statement. I'm trying not to panic.
Okay. So if anybody has any specific questions, raise them. Otherwise, what I'd like to say is give an overall statement about this. Our budget has always historically been divided into two main sections, salaries and expenses. During the FY08 budget development, we built a $125,000 deficit into the salary line of the budget. The current salary deficit stands at approximately $83,000. This means that we've absorbed about $42,000 of that projected deficit to date. The expense side of the budget currently stands at approximately $295,000. Sped tuitions and sped out-of-district transportation account for $267,000 of that projected deficit. Now, the $206,000 sped tuition deficit was one that we addressed last meeting, or the last time the budget statement was presented, and I had suggested that in the event we get toward the end of the year and we are in trouble, that we have the availability of revolving funds to cover those tuitions. Outside resources.
Paul, can I just,
Yes.
the word "in trouble," just to try to make it clear. when we do the budget each year, we don't know all of the special needs. We don't know who's moving in, who's moving out, whether or not things are changing. And so it is an estimate. And what the committee's done in the past, and correct me if I'm wrong, is we have some revolving accounts where money comes in after the fact to supplement some of this. And so we do the very best we can at estimating what we think that will be. We take some of that money out of the revolving account each year to cover some of the cost of it, with the idea that if the cost comes in higher than we anticipated, the revolving account is there to cover it. And if it turns out to be less than we thought, then that's a surplus that we can give back to the town. So I just wanted to clarify the word "in trouble." The process is meant to be an estimate to begin with. We don't know how many students are going to have needs and what those needs will be. And so it is part of that process. Now, in prior years, we've not had a $268,000 variance, probably. It's higher than it's been. And so the appropriate question would be, did the estimating process change going into this year that would account for the larger variance, or is it primarily a usage issue that, as a school committee, we have financial obligations to provide those special needs as determined by the programs?
I would say it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
We took a really hard look at what we had developed for budget numbers in the past and sped tuitions, and recognized the fact that a number of years in a row we had actually a surplus, and took a real hard look at how we budgeted, who we budgeted for, and made a decision that unless we had somebody that was 85+% on the way out the door in terms of an out-of-district placement, that we wouldn't build that person into the budget. And so we've been very, very conservative in those numbers. This year, that has bit us to a certain extent. Transportation, out-of-district transportation also goes hand in glove with the students and where they're placed. And are we lucky enough to place students in a similar school or a similar building, or do we have singletons that they're the only child in the cab that rides, and those get very, very expensive. There's one child that we spent in October over $4,000 to transport the student back and forth to school for the month in a specialized vehicle. And if the child has physical needs that require a monitor, it can get even more expensive. One of the things that started to hit us last year and has hit us again this year is and I think I'll say this correctly, the McKinley-Vento Act, which is federal legislation that has now changed the rules in terms of students that are deemed homeless. And if there's a student whose last school of record is Foxborough, has been deemed homeless, and they're now living in a different town, they have the option of either attending school at that town or attending the school here in Foxborough. If they attend the school here in Foxborough, the district where they're currently living and Foxborough splits the cost of that transportation on a 50-50 basis. If a child lives in a facility here or foster home in Foxborough who's been deemed homeless, and I'll just give an example, if the child was originally from Bridgewater and they've decided that they want to continue to go to school in Bridgewater, then Foxborough pays 50% of the cost of that transportation, along with Bridgewater paying the other 50% to transport that student back to Bridgewater. That is something that was new last year that cost about, I want to say $9,000 out of this account, and this year it looks like it's going to have a larger impact. And
when you say larger, what would that be?
Well, one of the problems that I see with this is they don't generally require transportation for the entire year. It's a short, it might be a month, it might be 2 months, but you don't know. So that it isn't something that when we place an out-of-district student that we can pretty much plan on transportation expenses for that student for the balance of the year. So in this situation with a homeless child, the experience has been the last year they do not last an entire school year.
But do you, in your projections that you have here, how much more do you think that's going to be than you had planned?
I'm hoping that my projection of 61,000 is extremely conservative, and that we'll be able to pull that number down as opposed to increase it.
Okay.
I have a question. If they're unexpected expenses, if we've done our budget and we've done due diligence, and we've done whatever we can, I think we have the option of always going back to the town and telling them it's an unexpected expense above and beyond. I mean, if you can't, we still have budgeted money that we need to spend in specific areas. So unfortunately, some of these things are totally unexpected expenses. And I think we reserve the right to always go back to the town because they are unexpected expenses.
Well, that is true, but we do have the reserve accounts, and that's
Right,
probably,
right.
from a town standpoint, the best way to address it.
Oh, absolutely, but I'm saying if anything ever went above and beyond that, then...
That's why I was asking Paul to when he used the word trouble, someone might imply that it wasn't budgeted properly or something else, but when you're dealing with a subject like this and their estimates, and you don't know how many students, and you don't know what their needs are going to be, and they change, and so when you have a couple of years of surpluses, you try to tighten that up a little bit, because if we budget more money than we need, then that's money that's not being used for something else, someplace else in the town or on the school side. And so we took the direction from the school committee, the advisory committee, and others to tighten that up, and for the first time in a number of years, it's kind of gone the other way. And so, I don't think that that's problematic in one sense. We have the reserve account to cover it, and we have to clearly understand what actually changed so that when we look at the budgeting for fiscal '09, we take the lessons learned from '08 and we incorporate those as well. Go ahead, Chris.
Just to segue that, because I think those are a couple of very important points. I think what we've also done at this time of the year, which I think is financially very prudent, and this is a good example, we have put in what we believe the cost will be for these students to be with us the whole year, knowing that that's the general trend is that doesn't happen. But I think putting them all in and looking at what the outside cost will be creates a deficit, if you see it that way, but it also makes sure that we know where everything is, and we put in all of the costs for everything at this point in time. And Paul and I were discussing today, there's a couple of salary areas that we're working on that we don't have, that we haven't concluded yet, but we've put all of that into the budget and into the planning so that we look at more of a worst-case scenario. But that doesn't mean it at some level it can't get worse if we have students moving in with different needs, et cetera, and that happens occasionally in every community. But I think which is why, again, in November, we're concerned, but we're not panicking. We're not saying we have to make cuts, or we have to go back to the town yet, or anything like that, or we have to use the reserve funds, but that we make sure that we're clear, public, and prudent about where we need to be. So I think that's exactly where we should be in November. Right. And I think Paul, you've done a great job with this. I think that's
Paul. To recap your numbers: 378 less roughly 268 in special needs and transportation leaves non-special needs about 110,000 of a deficit at this point, which appears to be fairly manageable considering how much time we have left in the year. But that also depends on our heating costs and our gasoline costs and other kinds of things. I think the message we want to get across is that if you take the special needs out for a second, we're watching all of those accounts very closely. We're looking at managing those. We don't anticipate a significant problem at this particular point, and we'll take prudent action over the next few months to address the 110,000 and any increase that might come because of heat. As well as continuing to monitor and work the special needs costs as closely as possible, but recognizing we have a legal and a moral obligation to those students to provide them the education that they need to have. And, at the end of the day, there may be a need to adjust some budget accounts, as the year goes on. There may not be. But we'll continue to watch that on a month-to-month basis and react in advance if we need to make any cuts in any other areas or freeze any accounts.
And just to wrap it up, although we're a little over 4 months into the fiscal year, we're really only a little over 2 months into our operational budget. I mean, we start operating in July and August, but our expense side, we don't really gear up until September. And so transportation bills, bus fuel, those types of expenses don't really kick in until September. So we're really only 2 months into our fiscal year in terms of how our operational year, I should say. And that's in the next 2 months, we'll have a much better handle on a lot of these expenses and where we stand.
Excellent. Questions from the committee? Can I have a motion to approve Paul's report? Motion by Katie, seconded by Martha. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, moving on. Before we get into other matters, I did want to make a comment that last week, one of our crossing guards in front of the charter school was hit by a car. And she is not hurt severely, although she'll be out of work a couple of weeks. When I talked to her at home, she told me this is the 4th time this year when she tried to stop traffic that the people in the car decided they weren't going to stop. It's the first time that one hit her. And the day that it happened was a rainy day, and she had her yellow slicker on from the rain. So it wasn't like she was dressed and you couldn't see her. I think it's important to communicate to the public the need to slow down in the school zones and to respect the crossing guards. When they're out there asking people to stop, they need to stop. She has indicated to me that she works for the police as well as us, and that the police have been very supportive at other parts of the year, but they just can't be every place at all times. I do think that Chris was going to reach out to the charter school folks and talk to them about how we might address that. As I understand it, it's a bad area. There's a history of problems there. But our thoughts and prayers go out to this injured employee, and we just want to send a message out to all the drivers to please be more careful. Luckily, she's fine, but it could have been a student as well. And people need to slow down on these main roads near the schools. Chris, did you want to add anything on that note?
No, I think that's exactly right. We are very concerned about this, and we will be addressing it. And I know that I've had discussions even before this happened with Chief O'Leary about that area, that being a difficult traffic area. But people need to be patient, and I really think that's the key.
Okay, Chris, other matters for you?
I have a couple of things. First of all, I hope the community and the committee read. We actually hired 2 young, energetic, and I think very strong athletic coaches. I just thanked Mike Hardman when I was over at the cross-country banquet. We're very excited about having 2 people. One, Jim Genovese, is our new hockey coach, varsity hockey coach, and he has an extensive resume and career so far. And C.J. Neely is our new boys basketball coach, and I actually, having followed, living in Easton, having followed their program over the years, remember watching him play high school basketball. He's had a terrific career at Bates, has coached at the college level, and has coached at some at the high school level. This is his first opportunity to coach a varsity sport, so we're excited about that. 2 very strong music awards that I'd like to talk a little bit about. One, actually Bev and Martha and I watched the jazz ensemble last Wednesday night at the MASC joint conference, and we all believe this was the first time ever that they received a standing ovation from 400 to 400 to 500, I think was the number that was at the dinner, and it was over the course of the 2+ days. I actually sent Steve Massey an email. I have never heard from that number of colleagues, superintendents and school committee members, about how great our jazz ensemble was. So there was just a spectacular event, and I thank them. We just found out this morning in an email, a press release, and if you don't mind if I read some of this, and I'd actually like to see if we can...
Did we have a copy of that for the audience too, Chris?
Did we have a copy out? Check and see. Foxborough High School musicians among the best in the district. After recent auditions, musicians from the Foxborough High School music program once again ranked among the best in the district and are headed to the Southeastern Senior District Festival January 11th and 12th in Barnstable. Several of the auditioning students also have qualified to audition for the All-State Festival, which will be held in March of 2008. And if you want me to take a minute, I'd love to offer the names. Students earning a spot in the district festival, and let me, just because of even last week, let me apologize in advance if I don't, if I'm not able to pronounce some of the names. There's someone who has his name on occasion butchered. I understand that. The district band, Julia DiCanzio, 11th grade French horn. Kevin Egan, 9th grade French horn. Jenny Greenleaf, 12th grade clarinet. Andrew Grube, 12th grade tuba. Haley Ianello, 11th grade flute. Eric Kenseth, 11th grade percussion. Robert Mortensen, 10th grade tuba. Dan Mullen, 12th grade euphonium. Maria Nevedo, 11th grade clarinet. Caitlin O'Brien, 12th grade clarinet. Anna Opatka, 10th grade bassoon. Blair Reed, 11th grade bassoon. Cassandra Shaw, 12th grade clarinet. Griffin Vacheron, 11th grade trombone. Those are all district band. District orchestra, Heather Cronin, 11th grade French horn. Cody McNeff, 11th grade oboe. District jazz band, and this one I made, Michelle Helou. Did anyone know Michelle Helou? 12th grade tenor sax, am I right? Nathan McNeff, 12th grade trombone. Matthew Muirhead, 10th grade trumpet. Brendan Thomas, 9th grade alto sax. And district chorus, Christopher Crocker, 12th grade bass. Jeff Dietzel, 11th grade bass. Jose Nevedo, 12th grade bass. Ethan Scarduzio, 12th grade bass. Students qualifying to audition for the All-State Festival are those with the top scores in each of the 5 district competitions. The Foxborough students who qualify to audition include Christopher Crocker, Julia DiCanzio, Jeff Dietzel, Jenny Greenleaf, Andrew Grube, Michelle Helou, Eric Kenseth, Cody McNeff, Nathan McNeff, Matthew Muirhead, Maria Nevedo, Caitlin O'Brien, Blair Reed, Cassandra Shaw, Brendan Thomas, and Griffin Vacheron. And the note I heard from, received from Steve Massey is, this is the most we've ever had. So congratulations. This is just a terrific accolades again for our music program. And I think we're always proud to talk about that.
Chris, if I could just add to that, I actually had a conversation with Steve. And what Steve shared with me is that the support he has had from the school committee over the last year is overwhelming to his department. And that what he said to me is, you ain't seen nothing yet. That this program will continue to expand its quality, its performance, its awards, and he wanted me to thank every member of the school committee for their support in both adding to the staff last year and adding to the instruments. Some of these instruments that we bought are $7,000 to $12,000 a piece. It's difficult for lots of parents to buy a $12,000 instrument. And so Mr. Massey wanted each and every one of you to know how important you are to this program, and that he would not have a world-class program that's going to get even better without the support of a superintendent and without the support of the school committee. So I wanted to pass that on.
He also told me, he's obviously very excited, that some of the instruments, like the timpanis, we will never have to purchase them again.
The other day at our budget meeting.
Right. So it was.
You made that perfectly clear, right?
Right.
Mr. Nevedo, you'd like to add something?
Yes, Andres Nevedo, 94 Scoops. I heard from some of these musicians, and what moved me most is we've heard the quality of music, and it's superb. But what I heard that moved me was that they actually were invited to sit down and have dinner with the superintendents, each in different districts, different tables, not as a group, but each one on their own. And it is only when a teacher has extreme confidence that these students will be great ambassadors, not only for the musicianship, but for the citizenship. And that says a lot for their program, that it's not just playing the notes, but it's being people that you are comfortable showcasing them like that. Thank you for allowing them that experience.
Dr. Mars, anything else? Okay. I just had one item. I wanted the public to know that the BIT auction was last Friday night. It was a resounding success. The preliminary indication is that we will exceed last year's total. Last year raised $54,000 for the 3 schools. I'm going to guess there were 500 or more people there. There was a silent auction, there was a live auction, and there were all sorts of other fundraisers that were taking place. The parents that put on this BIT auction put in hundreds of hours to make this work, and they deserve lots of credit. They use this fund so that, for instance, no one has to pay for a field trip. While many parents could afford a field trip, there are others that can't. And so rather than putting that family in a difficult situation, this BIT auction allows the community to come together and to raise the money that allows our 3 elementary schools to do lots of things that unfortunately the school committee can't fund. And when you can raise more than $50,000 in one evening, it's a tribute to the parents that were involved. It's a tribute to the community that came out and donated items for either the silent auction or the live auction. The parents that came and paid for the evening. We also had a jazz group made up of young high school students called 5 O'Clock Flat that played for nothing for an hour or two for the crowd while we were warming up. And then at the end of the night, they had a band called Midlife Crisis, which certainly seemed applicable for some folks. But it's just a tremendous, tremendous effort on the part of the community. I got a call on Sunday from the organizers, and they wanted again to specifically thank the school committee. They said that in the past, the school committee's never been formally invited to attend. And this year they went out of their way to formally invite the school committee and the superintendent. And they couldn't believe the outpouring from the school committee and from the superintendent to be there, to support the organization, to support the effort. And they shared with me, and I'm sure they'll share it with you as well, that they just believe this community is really coming together and rallying around our schools and working towards improvement. And they couldn't say enough, and they wanted the school committee to know how thankful they are for the support that you're providing, the direction you're providing, and the encouragement you're providing to help the schools move forward.
I think we certainly should make reference to the fact that the Patriots were huge supporters this year and gave quite a few items that I think if they were to raffle off the Randy Moss, Tom Brady tonight after last night's performance, it probably would have doubled in its value. So
I think it raised I think that one football was $1,700.
Yeah. You know, so I think it would have doubled after last night's performance, but the Patriots really, really contributed to this fundraiser, and we raised a lot of money because of it. So, and the Harrington's dinner, as usual, is a huge draw, and
well,
2 dinners.
Unfortunately, the auctioneer closed the auction down too quickly at $1,000, and then the person who lost was upset, and so to make it easier for that person, we decided to host a second dinner. So that person also donated $1,000 to the effort. So
if anybody has a black and white outfit to help serve, please contact the Harringtons. Help for the second night. But just one other thing. Having gone to the banquet the other night and the people at our table, the comments that we got from people about our jazz band was incredible. They just couldn't believe the quality and the way these young people presented themselves. Andres, you're absolutely correct. The way these students come across is definitely a tribute to their parents and the community and the program that we have, because they're outstanding individuals. And it was I was thrilled and excited and very proud of the fact that those kids were there and the way they played. It was unbelievable. So it was a great evening.
Several of the people did not want the business and speeches to go
I
on.
know, they wanted to listen to the kids.
They wanted to listen to the kids. Yep.
Katie, would you like to go next?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Kate?
Very quickly, we've talked a couple of times about getting our open enrollment figures so that we can know how we actually did as feedback from our budgeting last year, and I think it's very important going forward. And we not only have talked about it a couple of times, but we put it in our minutes in October that it would be tonight. I would really like us to have it presented and see what the enrollments are across district-wide, elementary, the Ahern, and the high school. I think that's important information to have.
Have it on the next agenda.
You're talking about class,
in the
I think
package?
Class
enrollment,
size.
not just
Class
the
size.
enrollment.
It's class size.
Class size.
Every second
Right.
we get that it gets later and later each year, and I mean, to find out we had 33 students in statistics come October was bad enough, and I don't think that we're going to find that, but if we don't get that information, we really don't know. So,
Okay.
Wendy, would you add for the agenda for the next meeting class size, please? Kate, anything else?
that's it.
Beverly?
I'd like to wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving, tasteful Thanksgiving, and in particular, I'd like to remember Bob Girardin tonight. He is a longstanding member of the community. He has contributed to education and teaching in Foxborough, and he was rivaling Mr. Igo at years of service. He's been on the school committee for the regional high school for several years. He now has had to move to assisted living in Mansfield, and I'm hoping that we can all send him his 100th birthday card come February.
In February, that's right.
And he's considering not running again.
Considering, I think.
Yeah. He's called me and he said, no, I really don't think I'm going to run again. So, that's quite a decision at 99.
At 99.
Anything else?
That's it.
Our assistant superintendent, do you have anything you'd like to add this evening?
I do not.
Okay. Chris, anything else for you?
All set?
All right, at 9:21, I'll adjourn the meeting. Do I have a motion?
Yes.
Motion by Beverly, second by Martha. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.